channel. I'm back to break down this 9-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Hopefully you had a good night last night. I did not because I played Garrett Cole and Shane Bieber in all of my lineups. And the Atlanta Braves called the game for rain when it wasn't raining. So, yeah. I'm a little frustrated about that. I don't understand it. And then they announced it at 7:10 right at lock. And all my lineups went dead immediately. So that was my night last night. Hopefully you played some Lucas Giolito. We went up there and threw a no-no, so that was cool. That just hurt me even more, but hopefully you played some Giolito in your lineups. You know, he went out there and threw a no-no, which is always cool, some history. Frustrating night for me, but we're going to move on to this slate today. Before I get into it, if you could just leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the content, that'll help me out a bunch with the YouTube algorithm. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll be here all season giving you some good content to improve your daily fantasy baseball game. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS for me tweeting out updates whenever possible. And then lastly, I do have a Patreon package over there on Patreon I've been working really hard on. That'll give you all the color-coded data that you see behind me for starting pitchers. And then I have things like hot hitter StatCast data, so things like barrel percentage, exit velocity for the top hitters in the league, all color-coded, team hitting data, bullpen data. And you'll get access to my Discord chat where you can ask me any questions all the way up until lock. So with that being said, enough of the promo stuff. Let's start breaking down this slate today. So, yeah, we have a 10-game, what was a 10-gamer that looks like a 9-gamer now because the Yankees and Atlanta Braves game isn't going to count for stats on the slate. So it's looking like we have 9 games. As always, I like to go ahead and look at the K percentage to start things out to figure out the pitchers we're going to want to get in our lineups. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. And when looking at the guy that stands out the most in K rate today, tops the slate, we have Dinelson Lamet over here taking on the Seattle Mariners, and he comes with a 33.7% K rate. The ground ball and the fly ball stuff's a little rough, so, he can get himself in trouble with the hard contact. But against righties, he's absolutely elite. He's got a 37.2% K rate. Against lefties, it's a 30.9. So he's just a guy who gets a ton of strikeouts, and he's taking on a Seattle Mariners team today when looking at, I'll give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of the team heading data sheet. When looking at their numbers, you can see that they come in with a 24.1% K rate. And against right-handed pitchers specifically, they have a 22.8% K rate. So definitely a lineup that's below average in the K rate, which is just going to help strengthen the appeal for Lamet even more. And then when you look at his price tag in the Vegas lines, he comes in at 8.6K price tag on DraftKings, so he's in the mid-range. That's very affordable. And he's a 235 favorite, so Vegas likes him to go out there and get the win today. So that always makes us like him even more. So Lamet, first guy you got to get in your lineups and think about playing. And then moving further along, the absolute top pitch on the slate goes kind of without saying, and Jacob Degrom, most elite name on the slate. When you look at his SIERA, he leads the slate by a large margin, and his ERA, he leads it by a large margin as well. He's got a 32% K rate and a 15.5 swinging strike rate, which is very impressive. Both him and Lamet have very impressive swinging strike rates, so you got to like that. But DeGrom's much better in the hard contact, the walk, and all that stuff. And he's got a 34.3% K rate against righties and then a 24.9 against lefties. So, it's Jacob DeGrom. We know what we're getting with him. Top pitcher in the league, Cy Young candidate year in and year out. And when looking at who he's taking on today, and the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are always a team that we like to target. They're a weak lineup. DeGrom's a 265 favorite, so Vegas is, agreeing with us on this one. And then you throw in the fact that he's 11K. Pricing is a thing, and that just shows that he is the top pitch on the slate. He's priced up like he is, but deservingly so. And he is definitely going to be a priority for your lineups if we can find some cheaper bats. So we'll get into that later in the video, but we're going to want to find some bats to fit in some DeGrom unless we can find some cheaper pitching, but I think DeGrom's going to be a priority today. Moving further along, the next guy that we have to target is that in Mike Clevenger. Clevenger is returning and taking on the Minnesota Twins. He's got a 28.4% K rate, 33% against righties, and a 24.2% against lefties. So, the 33% against righties really stands out. we are obviously going to prefer to target Clevenger in right-handed heavy matchups if at all possible, because that's a big bump in his K rate. And when looking at the lineup he's taken on today in the Minnesota Twins, they do have their fair share of lefties. They're majority left-handed hitters, so that kind of dampens the appeal a little bit for the Clevenger play. But he's still a guy with a high K rate, and he can still go out there and get the job done. It's just a matter if you're willing to pay that 8-9 price tag for Clevenger when we have other options that might be a little bit cheaper or maybe a little bit more expensive that are in better matchups. So I think Clevenger is a good tournament play. Not a lot of people like to target the Twins, so naturally I think his ownership will be a little lower because he's taking on Minnesota today. And then we have Robbie Ray taking on the Colorado Rockies. Robbie's got a 30.9% K rate. And when looking at the matchup today, it's in Arizona, so that makes us like the Rockies. If it was in Coors, it's a little bit of a different story, but the Rockies on the road, we can definitely target. And Robbie's only 6.9K. Now, that is tied into his struggles. He's really been struggling this year. So, a little bit of a disclaimer there. But at the end of the day, Robbie does have a high strikeout rate. He just gives up a ton of hard contact, most notably against righties. He did a 461 slugging, a 45.8 hard hit rate, and a 349 WOBA. I mean, all right on the sheet, and yeah, that's his issue. Right-handed hitters give him a real big issue, but against lefties, he's very good. So, if at all possible, we really would like to target him against left-handed heavy lineups. And, when looking at Colorado today, you're not really going to get that. There's 3 lefties in there, so that's great, but not really the best matchup. But he is a 126 favorite, and the upside's there, and he's only 6.9K. So I think Robbie's a big risk-reward play today. If you are going to the bats and you really want to pay up, Robbie's a guy you can throw in there. Hope he gives you that upside, and then your expensive bats go off. And you could be dealing with a contrarian lineup that gets you high up in those tournaments. So I would understand that, but definitely a little risky. And then the last guy we have to mention is over in this next game in Clayton Kershaw. Kershaw comes in at 10.2K, and he's taking on the San Francisco Giants, which when looking at the Giants' K rate this season, we can see that they have a 21.2% K rate. So they're not really a team that strikes out a ton. However, with that being said, I will say they're not a very threatening team. And Kershaw gets to go into San Francisco here, which is a great pitching environment. And at 10-2 on DraftKings, he is kind of competing with Degrom a little bit, because unless you're paying up for both of them, you're probably going to have to only play one of those guys. And I would greatly prefer Degrom personally, but Kershaw is also in a great matchup, and I have to mention him. If you can't get the extra 800 to get up to Degrom, he's pitcher number 2 as far as priority. So enough of the pitching. We got to move on to bats. When looking at some of the pitchers we're going to want to target today as far as playing hitters against, the first guy that stands out is up here in Dakota Hudson, taking on the Kansas City Royals. Hudson has a very good ground ball and fly ball rate, but the SIERA's bad, the K rate's bad, the swing strike rate's bad. And when looking at his hard contact giving up, against righties, he's below average. And then against lefties, he's kind of below average as well. So it's really just, he stands out from a SIERA aspect. He's bottom on the slate in SIERA. And when looking at the Kansas City Royals lineup today, they only have a 3.74 implied team total. And I should mention that the St. Louis Cardinals have a very good bullpen as well. So typically I like to go ahead and look at the SIERA and kind of analyze from there. And Dakota Hudson does have the lowest SIERA on the slate. But to be honest with you, I'm going to go ahead and kind of scratch this one. Probably not going to want to target these Royals bats today. So just kind of thinking out loud as we break this down. But typical rule of thumb is I like to go into my sheet. I look at SIERA. I look at guys we can target, and in this case, I don't think that applies. So we got to analyze all things, and then when looking at the Vegas data, that's kind of backing this up. So in this one case, I would say probably don't target these Royal bats. But one place I definitely do have target interest in, and I can tell you right now, is this Texas game. You have Mike Fiers and Colby Howard taking the mound, and when looking at their numbers, you can see, Mike Fiers is below average across the board. A lot of red and orange going on there. And then you look at his splits. He's terrible against right-handed hitting. He's got a 460 slugging giving up against righties, a 329 WOBA, not good. And then against lefties, he's actually better. So we prefer right-handed hitters against him. And when looking at this Texas lineup, they do have a few guys we can target. I will say that Texas is a pretty left-handed heavy lineup, so it's really just more of a one-off in this spot. So guys like Todd Frazier, Jose Trevino, Isaiah Kinner, Falefa, and Yadiel Rivera are our targets. And Nick Solak at the top of the lineup being the main one. Really just want to target Solak mainly, but have to mention the splits in Mike Fiers. And then when things get really interesting is when we start looking at the Oakland A's side, because they get to take on Colby Howard. And when looking at Colby Howard's numbers, he has been absolutely bad. I had mentioned that, Dakota Hudson was bad in the SEER department. I actually made a little bit of an error there because Colby Howard is the worst on the slate. And I should have mentioned him first because he's just bad. So let's make that clear. Colby Howard's my top guy to target today. He's got a 444 slugging against righties, a 349 WOBA. And then against lefties, he's got a 394 WOBA and a 46.3% hard hit rate. Just terrible and very terrible against right-handed hitting. And Oakland has some guys that slug lefties. So we're really going to like Oakland today. And to be honest with you, I like every single righty in this lineup. Our top options are going to be at the top of the order. So Semien, Piscotty, Canna. But then at the bottom of the order, Laureano and Chris Davis also slug. And then you got Franklin Barreto and Sean Murphy. Barreto's at a cheap price tag, and Sean Murphy crushes lefties, and he's a catcher, so he fills in that spot for you. So yeah, a lot of interest in the Oakland A's today. And Matt Olson's going to be low owned because he's expensive, and he's a left-handed bat taking on a lefty. But if they can knock Colby Howard out of this game early and bring in the bullpen, Matt Olson's going to have his chance to shine as well. So maybe throw him in as a contrarian play if you can fit that salary in your lineups. And then moving further along here, when looking at the splits on my sheet, we definitely have some other guys that we can target. And mainly, I shouldn't say mainly, but one thing that really stands out to me is Taijuan Walker splits against left-handed hitting. He is very bad, and he takes on the San Diego Padres today. So in looking at the San Diego Padres hitters, I have a lot of interest in the San Diego Padres lefties. Trent Grisham, Eric Hosmer, Cronenworth, Profar, Naylor, every single lefty in this lineup I have a lot of interest in. And then when you look at Walker's numbers against righties, it's not like they're that impressive. He is good in the slugging and the WOBA rate, but everything else is orange across the board. So, he's just really bad against lefties. So I want to mention there's definitely some pitchers with some splits issues on this slate, and we're going to want to target those guys here. I had mentioned Robbie Ray's issues against righties. We'll get into that next. But Taijuan Walker has some big issues against lefties. So these lefties in this San Diego Padres lineup I like a lot today. And then I had mentioned Robbie Ray. We're going to go ahead and talk about him real quick. Taking on the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies have two guys in their lineup that are very good against left-handed pitching. Very, very good. Use the word elite, and that is Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Now, they are priced up, but when looking at Robbie Ray's numbers, we don't care because he has a 461 slugging against righties, a 45.8% hard hit rate, and a 349 WOBA. Very bad, and right across the board in those three hitting statistics, and that makes me love these righties for Colorado today. And obviously, the main candidates are that and Arenado and Story. As always, taking on the lefty. Anytime they take it on the lefty, they are my main targets. So like me some Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado today. And as far as stacking, we definitely have to mention some stacks for you guys here because there's been a lot of one-off talk. I'm going to go ahead and promote these Mets in the first game. because they have a 4.41 implied team total, but when looking at Hernandez's numbers, you can see he's red and orange across the board. And against righties, he gives up a 439 slugging. Ground ball and the fly ball rate are very bad, so that's what really makes him stand out to target today. His ground ball and his fly ball stuff's bad. We like to target pitchers that are going to allow the ball to be hit in the air and give up home runs, and Hernandez is definitely on that list, and lefties, he's even worse. So I really like these Mets today overall as a whole lineup. I really like these Mets lefties. But I really like anyone with power and anyone with talent on this Mets team. Just throw in the best hitters really is what it comes down to. But when looking up and down the lineup, I don't know. I love everyone 1 through 7. Ramos and Ahmed Rosario aren't really high on my list, in the 8 and the 9 spot, but 7, 1 through 7, I literally like every single one of these guys. So a lot of interest in the Mets today. I want to make that clear. Get some Mets in your lineups. Love them today. And then this Detroit Chicago Cubs game is one that really stands out. There's a 10.5 implied total. And when looking at the pitchers, you have John Lester, who his numbers are really below average. A lot of orange going on. And then against righties, you can see there's some red popping in the slugging category. And against lefties, he's not that much better. But it's really the right-handed hitters. So Detroit, you can target these righties today for a stack. And they're cheap. So, the guys that crush left-handed pitching, Jacoby Jones, Jonathan Scope, Miguel Cabrera. At the top of the lineup, you got to like them a lot. And then you can also target, pretty much anyone else in this lineup. Salary-wise, it's going to allow you to fit in. We talked about a guy like Jacob Degrom. I think the Tigers are a great stack to give you some salary relief, to maybe throw in a lead stack with them, and then maybe fit in DeGrom as well. So throw that out there. And then the Chicago Cubs taking on Fulmer, you got to have a lot of interest in. And Fulmer, once again, red and orange across the board. He gives up a 454 slugging against righties and a 342 WOBA, not good. And against lefties, he's actually a little bit better. So I say better, but still orange. He's not good. He's just not good overall. But we do prefer the right-handed hitters. So my top options are going to be Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras. But with that being said, as I had mentioned, we don't really need the righties. We can do both because he's just bad overall. So the elite hitters in Happ, Rizzo, Schwarber at the top of the lineup, you got to like them. And then I had mentioned yesterday, which was kind of the approach I went with, which didn't pay off because Cole got scratched. But I can see you stacking the bottom of this order because they're all cheap. You get exposure to a high run total. You're probably going to get them at low ownership, and then you can get some elite pitching in. So I like that strategy as well. We obviously prefer the guys in the middle of the order, but a little bit of a contrarian approach there, and it could pay off in a big way if you get some two elite pitchers in your lineups. And then the last spot I have to mention is, well, we got to kind of speed things up here, but 2 more spots. The St. Louis Cardinals taking on Jacob Junis, and he's orange across the board pretty much. And then against righties, he really struggles. He gives a 464 slugging to right-handed hitters. And against lefties, he's below average. So Junis is a guy that really struggles against right-handed hitting. So we prefer, Paul Goldschmidt and Paul DeJong. There are our premier options in this lineup. Then you could throw in Yadier Molina and Harrison Bader as well. But Junis is just bad overall. So as we discussed, it looks like it's going to be 88 degrees, good hitting weather, 6 mile an hour winds blowing out. So you can just throw in the top hitters in this lineup: Colton Wong, Tommy Edman, Matt Carpenter. The 1 through 5 range you're really going to want to lock in on. And then once again, the bottom of the lineup is cheap, affordable, and there some exposure to a high implied run total. So I just love that. I just love that approach. When you can get guys that cheap, a team that I had interest in over in this other game is the San Diego Padres. And if you look in the 6 hole, Jake Cronenworth's been very good, but he's 3.8. And then if you go over to the Cardinals, you got a guy like Dexter Fowler who's 2.7, and he's in a spot where his team has a high implied run total. So this is the stuff I just want to point out. And then lastly, you have to mention the Dodgers taking on Gausman. Gausman, once again, below average across the board, and he really struggles against right-handed hitting. He gives up a 448 slugging, not good, not going to get the job done. And lefties, he's better. So we actually, I say better, once again, below average, not good. But the righties is where he really struggles. So Mookie Betts is a guy you're definitely going to want to have a lot of interest in today. You're going to pay for him at 6.2, but Mookie is in a great spot. Justin Turner, AJ Pollock, and Chris Taylor and Austin Barnes, gotta like all those guys. And then, as I mentioned, the lefties are still in a good spot because he's below average. I just do prefer the righties, but you can always, of course, stack up these Dodgers if you're confident with guys like Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, and Max Muncy. They crush baseballs, and then you got Jock Peterson at the bottom of the lineup. So yeah, that's my breakdown of the slate. I really like the Oakland A's today. I really like the New York Mets today, and then this Chicago Cubs and Detroit game, you got to have a lot of interest in. They had a high implied total, and can definitely go ahead and stack that game up and feel pretty good about your lineups. Quick little overview of the pitchers I like. I like Degrom. I like Mike Clevenger as a tournament play today. I like Dinelson Lamet taking on the Seattle Mariners. I like Clayton Kershaw taking on the San Francisco Giants. And I think Robbie Ray is another tournament play where, 6'9", and he's been struggling. You can go out there and get you a lot of strikeouts, and you could be in a good position in tournaments. So with all that being said, I do have to give you guys my home run call of the day. And my home run call today is going to be in this first game taking on Eliza Hernandez. And I had mentioned his struggles against lefties, and I think one of these lefties is going to go deep today. And that lefty is Michael Conforto. I really like Michael Conforto today in the cleanup spot for these New York Mets, and I think he's hitting a home run. So he's my home run call of the day. We're 5 for 10 on the home run call, so back to 50%, and looking to get back on the right call, right train today in Michael Conforto. Like him today, get him in your lineups. He's going deep. You got 11-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to right. It's just going to increase the appeal for these lefties of the Mets. So that's all from me today. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos that I come out with. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.